Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz vibraphonist Matt Moran. We spoke with him back on April 20th, 2020, as the COVID-19 world was starting to close in on all of us. He opened up about his life, his past, and the future. He was named Rising Star on the Vibraphone by the 2014 Downbeat Critics Poll, but he is just as often known for his work as the drummer and bandleader for the brass band Slavic Soul Party. His career exists in a diverse musical environment full of chamber music, jazz, Balkan, and many other elements. He's also dedicated to music education for incarcerated people. He has released 10 albums as a leader and performed on nearly 100 albums by other artists like Theo Bleckmann and William Parker and so many others. Get to know him and dig this interview.
Yeah, it's strange times, huh?
Very much. And you're in Lee's Summit, is that right?
Yeah, the home of Pat Metheny.
Yeah, and also another musician I work with named Tim Vaughn, a trombone player who plays in my brass band.
Oh, wow. How long has he been there?
Yeah, he's been in here in New York, I don't know, probably 15 or so years.
Well, cool. There's always some kind of arc that gets drawn back to your hometown, I guess. So.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, hey, thank you for taking some time out. It's an extraordinary time in our history, and I'm going to be biased here and say that the vibraphone is it's one of our favorites here at the show. It's my favorite, so.
Well, thank you, yeah. Vibraphone is a unusual instrument for sure.
Yeah, but it's one of, it just creates such a sonically rich sound, so. So what kind of projects, what are you doing artistically now to kind of pass the time as we're in the middle of this COVID-19 quarantine?
You know, I'm trying to do all the things we're all doing, just stay sane and get by and try and find moments of creativity that help with that. So there's a lot of music making in my house. My wife is a musician and my daughter plays music. So just using music for what it's for on a daily basis is incredibly helpful. And then, of course, there's all the projects that you want to keep going and keep working on. So the Claudia Quintet just released an online performance of the song, and an improvised percussion ensemble I'm in called Human Time Machine, did something like that. So, and there's more in the works. So, of course, we're making music remotely with people. And one of the things I did is use the first few weeks of this period to finish up a trio album. I had it mastered, and that's super exciting for me. That album is called Return Trip, and I sent you a track of that. It features organist Gary Versace on the Hammond B3 and Tom Rainey on drums, two of my favorite musicians in the world, two people who I've heard for years and years and years since I was a student, and it's wonderful. This is our second record now, and it's wonderful to have a working, supportive, creative relationship with these guys. So, we do what we can.
Yeah, that's pretty much all you can do at this point. Talk to me a little bit about your beginnings, where you were born and raised, and how jazz became your life.
So I grew up in northeastern Connecticut. I was playing all kinds of music, playing percussion, but jazz was not one of them. And I heard jazz and fell in love with jazz listening to Out to Lunch by Eric Dolphy and A Love Supreme, John Coltrane's quartet. And so those were the sounds that pulled me in. Cecil Taylor and Duke Ellington, those four artists were among the first that made me realize that jazz really spoke to me. And I started looking for folks who could help me out on learning to play jazz on the vibraphone, and it just wasn't really happening in northeastern Connecticut. There weren't many folks around. I was really out kind of in a rural environment. And eventually it became clear that Jay Hogard was moving to Wesleyan. It's in Middletown, Connecticut, to teach at Wesleyan. And so I had, he was my first real vibes teacher. And I had about 4, 5, 6 months with him before I left high school and went to Berklee College of Music when I was 17. So Jay, while it was a very short period of time, was a very influential person on me. Then I was at Berklee College of Music, where Gary Burton was dean of curriculum, and there was a real strong vibes program there. Ed Sandin is a wonderful mallet player and teacher, and he was a big influence on me there too. And eventually I took lessons with Gary, who was a wonderful mentor. So that was sort of how I came into playing jazz. I considered it a kind of a source of shame that I graduated from Berklee College of Music. Not that it's not a good school, but when you're there as a student, you see the people coming through who are just so amazing and wonderful and get all these professional opportunities before they have time to finish their studies. So I finished my studies there and decided I wanted to keep going. I wanted to study more jazz composition, and I did a master's degree at New England Conservatory. And there I met a man named Joe Maneri, who was a tremendous visionary multi-instrumentalist and composer, who was right at the point of breaking out into international acclaim with his quartet at that point, with his son Matt Moran on violin and viola, and Randy Peterson on drums, and John Lockwood on bass usually. So that was a huge influence on me, and Joe became a real mentor and teacher and profound influence on me. At that point, I was able to study with people like Jimmy Giuffre and Paul Bley and really wonderful musicians too. So in 1995, I moved to New York, having met a lot of amazing musicians in Boston. I did not hang around for another minute after I finished school and really wanted to be in New York. And so that's the past quarter decade, 25 years I've been in Brooklyn, living and creating with just a real vibrant, amazing cross-section of musicians here.
So you've had 10 plus albums on your own. You've been on over 100. You've been around so many legends and luminaries. What have you learned from the veterans and the legends? What have they given you, whether it's been in a performing or a teaching capacity, that's really resonated with you all these years?
A couple things really stick out in my mind when I think about the lessons I've learned from my mentors, from amazing musicians I've worked with. One is just kindness. The folks who are really great are so open and sort of kind with how they work with people. That really sticks out in my mind. It's important. I've learned that it's really important to trust people, to choose people you can trust, and to have long relationships with folks and allow those relationships to change and grow. I think that's super important. And there are a lot of people I look at in music who I find that to be a real inspiring aspect of their career. I've been thinking about that a lot as with the passing of McCoy Tyner, and you look at the transformation of the Coltrane Quartet. Another thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I can't help but thinking about it when we talk about Joe Maneri and Jimmy Giuffre, two men who talk to me a lot about phrasing. That there's really in jazz a very there's a real what's the phrase I'm looking for? There's sort of an oral tradition of phrasing that's so important, and that is often overlooked in the process of jazz. The jazz tradition being passed on more often through education than through professional sort of working together, an apprenticeship in the way that it used to be more. So I feel like phrasing, learning how to create very meaningful musical information through phrasing is super important. It's hard to put it into words succinctly, and it's still something I'm thinking about, how to communicate well to myself and to people I teach too. So I'm sorry if I'm struggling for words there, but we'll just leave it at that word, phrasing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's totally cool. So what do you like best about being a musician?
What do I like best about being a musician? All the music. That's my favorite part. You know, I like that. I like that music is a social thing. It fills a role in society, and it's something that you can do with other people, and I really like that aspect of it. You know, more and more through education, I have seen really how important music is. I don't view it as a luxury. You know, of course, I understand that, you know, shelter and food and water and health come first, but I really think that it's a super important part of how we feel alive and human. And I do a lot of work teaching music to incarcerated people, and I've seen firsthand how it betters people's lives, both inside prisons and outside prisons. So that to me is the real fundamental part of being a musician, and why it's so thrilling and important to be a part of. It's good for me, and it's good for everyone else who does it, you know?
Yeah, without a doubt. So we're going to eventually get to the end of this tunnel of the COVID-19 quarantine that we're in, and we're going to get back to the stage, and we're going to get back to the audience. What revelations do you hope that both fan and musician get from this experience that is good for them?
What a good question, man. Let me think about that for a second here. Wow. Well, you know, I think that it is obviously a real pressure cooker in certain ways that's letting people really appreciate what's good in their lives and probably feel very, in excruciating ways, what's bad in their lives, you know? I've lived through other traumatic events here in New York City. I'm thinking of September 11th. And there are ways in which it shakes people up to take necessary action to realize and value the things that are most important to them. I think it's going to be really interesting coming out of this one, the role of live music and live performance. I am really worried about the health of our venues, the club owners who have poured much of their lives into creating outlets, especially for music like jazz that doesn't have a huge commercial potential. So I'm really wondering and worried about how we're going to manage these transitions back to making the music part of people's lives, and especially jazz, which, you know, it sounds cliched and trite, but it's such a vital part of American culture. And in saying that, you know, I really want to emphasize it is, in my opinion, an African American based, you know, folk tradition that's beyond folk. So I really worry about how we're going to be able to preserve and enrich it going forward, especially knowing what the COVID-19 is doing to communities of color, especially African American and Latino communities in the U.S. So I think that we we don't really, I don't think there's any way to predict, but I think we've got some shockers coming to us in terms of how to make live music vital coming out of this. I think we're going to have some real hard times, and I think it's going to encourage a period of reflection where people have to figure out what's important to them and what can they do for it.
Sir, my final question is this, to get to the essence of you. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your students, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Are you asking me in a philosophical way or in a very practical way? What?
Just a practical way. Just, everyone views you in a different light, but, you're ultimately the one that is in control of your head.
Oh, I wish I felt in control of that. I'm really not sure where you're going with this. I will tell you that I often take a very subjective view of reality, and so I am trying to be a good partner and a good parent and a good musician. This is a period where it's been super helpful both as a musician and as an educator to really get back to basics, to think about the role of fundamentals. Let's see. Who am I? I am a Gemini that loves to play the vibraphone and loves to play percussion and not play the vibraphone. I need both of those things in my life. And I'm a person that just is easily and deeply moved by music, and I'm just trying to be kind to everyone and make music.
That's perfect, man. That's a great answer. Hey, man, thank you for taking some time out today in this very extraordinary time for all of us on the planet.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing your work. I'm happy to talk, and I hope that you'll mix some music in with this so people can hear some of the things that I feel are important.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Matt for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Davino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.